Got questions? I know I do. Today we're beginning our summer series in which we explore your questions in worship. We've asked you over the past couple weeks, what questions do you have about faith, spirituality, or religion? What do you wrestle with in creating a meaningful life? And what questions keep you up at night? We take up these questions because, and answers, because they have a role in our spiritual growth. I sometimes find myself asking why. Similar to, but perhaps not as insistent as the little girl in our first reading by Victoria Safford. Why do bees sting? Why have I been the landing place for more bird poop than most people I know? Why do some people have seemingly easy lives while others suffer one loss after another? Why do people keep killing each other? Some of these questions have an answer, or many answers. But when it comes to other questions, there may be no answer, or no way of really fully knowing. We hit a dead end or get trapped in the why, as Safford puts it. I imagine you have found yourself in a similar situation at some point in your life, trapped in the why. As your ministers have seen over the past couple weeks, you have a lot of questions weighing on your minds and hearts. We received questions about loneliness, prayer, how to live a good life, how to discern your calling, and a wonderful array of theological questions on evil, God, grace, and so much more. We also got some really good questions about Unitarian Universalism, which we will take up in our annual UU 101 sermons at the end of August. Some of these, though, were specifically about how to talk about Unitarian Universalism, which can be a challenge. And so, if you are one of those people, may I recommend our UU Elevator speech class, which is scheduled for the end of August. It's a rare opportunity to practice talking about Unitarian Universalism with a friendly group, not being put on the spot in an elevator or on an airplane. In reflecting on your questions and the role of questions in our spiritual lives, I realized that there are a couple different kinds of questions. Some are nearly impossible to answer. For example, questions that begin with why, but are really just a statement with a question mark on the end. Not that you asked any of these, but for the purposes of illustration, these are questions like, why are you such a jerk? Or, why am I the only one who does any work around here? These questions, or statements, only lead to judgment and conclusions of a very limited perspective. Other why questions lead us to a never-ending circle without answers. Why did this happen to me? Why did they do this? A different kind of question, however, opens the way to deeper spiritual and theological exploration. These are the questions that we need to be asking here in church. And they often begin not with the word why, but with the word what. For Safford, the real religious questions, the far more serious echoing ones, are not why questions. They ask what and what now? How shall we live in this complex world, this broken world, you and I and everyone? This question, how shall we live in this world, is, I think, at the core of many of the questions that you asked, though it took many different forms. As Unitarian Universalists, we love questions. We're not always as comfortable with or willing to give specific answers. We acknowledge that we don't believe all the same, and it's not a shared creed that brings us together. But this doesn't mean that we are completely devoid of answers as a faith. I think we do have some very clear answers to this question of how we should live in this world. These answers are reflected in our 7 principles, in which we commit to engage one another with justice, equity, and compassion. We accept and encourage one another's spiritual growth We use the democratic process, and we respect the interdependent web of which we are a part, knowing that what we do affects others and vice versa. Our answers are reflected in the affirmation that we say every Sunday, which calls us to dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, and to serve humanity in fellowship. And our answers are reflected in our call to you as a church that you hear often, to live lives of generosity, compassion, and service. When we say this, it's because we believe that dedicating yourself to these principles will lead to a better life for you and for others. Now, as Unitarian Universalists, we love questions because one of our defining theologies is that revelation is not sealed. If all has been revealed by a prophet or in scriptures, then there's no need to ask questions. Some of you come from religious backgrounds where questioning is discouraged or even forbidden. The answers are clear, or at least they say they are, and the quest is to more deeply understand and embody these answers. But if revelation is ongoing, we must be always open to new wisdom and new truth, found in our own lived experience and from diverse sources. Here, religion is not about filling ourselves with absolute certainty, but rather creating space within ourselves for new revelation. One way to think about continuous revelation is illustrated in a Chinese folk tale about a farmer. The farmer had only one horse, and one day the horse ran away. The neighbors came to offer their sympathies for his terrible loss. "What are you going to do?" they said. The farmer's answer was, "We'll see." A month later, the horse came home, this time bringing with her two beautiful wild horses. The neighbors were excited at the farmer's good fortune. "Such lovely, strong horses," they said. And the farmer said, "We'll see." The farmer's son was thrown from one of the wild horses and broke his leg. All the neighbors came to him and were distressed. "Such bad luck," they said. And the farmer said, "We'll see." A war came, and every able-bodied man was conscripted and sent into battle. Only the farmer's son, because he had a broken leg, remained. The neighbors congratulated the farmer. "We'll see," he said. And I'm sure it probably goes on from there. But the farmer knew what the neighbors didn't, that truth in any given moment is partial, and it's always evolving. Just as the farmer was open to what new realities may come his way, we as Unitarian Universalists are a responsive faith, seeking ever new understandings. We're not afraid to say, "We'll see," or even, "I don't know." Sometimes when we don't know, we must, as Rilke says in our second reading, have patience with what is unresolved in our hearts. We must learn to love the question even when it stubbornly resists a final answer. If we cannot accept the mystery and move on, we must, as Safford says, reverently move in. And I've been sitting this week with what it means to reverently move in to a question. It's an interesting way of putting it. I think it doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean accepting the mystery and unknowing. Reverently moving in means making a faithful commitment to pursue and to live that question, to ask the what and what now questions until you live into the answer. So this is the what now of my message to you today. My hope is that as you grow as spiritual beings and deepen in your faith, is that you will ask the real religious questions. The questions that, as our reading said, are open, wide, and holy, exciting, dangerous, urgent, comforting, and sustaining. I hope you will love and live the questions, engaging them from a place of openness. The principle of continuous revelation suggests that meaning has not been finally captured, and therefore we have a role in pursuing that meaning, even if it can never be fully captured or understood. As we move along our spiritual journeys, it serves us well to cultivate a practice of spiritual curiosity. And in a way, I realized it's fitting that this message about loving and living the questions coincides with Father's Day. Because I learned the value of questioning and curiosity from my father. Whenever he meets something or someone new, he asks lots of questions and seeks out opportunities to learn. As he became a leader in the UU church where I grew up, he dove into reading about Unitarian Universalism and governance and leadership. When I went off to college, he did an online search and printed out pages and pages of history of the college and the town, which he passed on to me with sections highlighting noteworthy figures or those related to our Unitarian and Universalist history who studied there. He's been known to wander into restricted areas, simply out of curiosity about what he'll find there. When he goes to a museum, he reads every single word of the artist's statements and curator's explanations. This insatiable curiosity translates into matters of the spirit as well. Now, at times as a kid, I thought this was a little ridiculous. But as I look back now, I realize how he influenced me for the good and has taught me a lesson about never ceasing to be curious. I've heard curiosity defined as a state of being in constant, unhindered question, inquiry, and wonder. I hope that this summer of loving and living the questions might help us all cultivate a practice of spiritual curiosity, of unhindered question, inquiry, and wonder. Imagine what would happen here at church or in our lives beyond if we did. Not knowing and being curious enough to seek out answers is an invitation also to find such meaning in community with others. If I don't know the answer to a question, I could go around in circles by myself, or I could seek out a community of people who will help me explore. And for this, we have church. Living the questions by seeking, exploring, experiencing, practicing, and reflecting is a lifelong effort. It's lifelong because we change and learn new things throughout our lives. There's no end to curiosity. There's always something more to be curious about. And someday, if we keep following our curious instincts, we might live our way into some answers. So this summer, we will live the questions. We will address your quandaries about life and faith, share what answers we do have, and lead us down a path of exploring what these questions mean for us. Each of your questions points toward a common, foundational, real religious question, which is, how now shall we live? How shall we live given what we know of this life, this world, and the Spirit? So let's ponder this together. Any questions? I hope so. May your spiritual curiosity never cease. May it be so. Amen.